it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We will be talking about running, mental health, youth sport burnout, specialization in sports, motivation, encouragement, coaching, parenting, sleep, nutrition, really anything that you can think of that we as parents or coaches or just runners can do to help our young athletes. Today, I am talking to Ashley Keller, who is a BCBA, and she has a bunch of other certifications that I'm not going to try to butcher, and she will tell you them at the beginning of our interview. And she's also working on some other certifications as well. So she has a lot going on. It'll all be written in the notes if you're curious as well. And it's on her website, which will be linked in the notes also. Today, we talk about two of the programs that she offers virtually for families, parents. It's really geared towards individuals who have children with high needs or special needs, but a lot of her tips are really awesome just for parents in general. So it's really great talking with her. We talk a lot about the programs, but also just things that are relevant to coaching and working with young athletes and helping to motivate them as well. I feel like I'm always talking about how we are helping to motivate our young runners. So this was another great opportunity to get some awesome advice from her.
Cool. Okay, so normally I start with talking about running with people since it is talking about running, but I feel like we were kind of on a roll talking about your program, and we can actually just start with that if you want, since that's where we were at, and then we can move into parenting stuff and then running a little bit. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay, cool. So I feel like I always forget the name of the programs that you have. So do you want to just kind of talk about, I think it's like the two main ones that we were just talking about, and then kind of who they're for, what it really is, and kind of all that stuff.
Yeah. So my company is EmpowerSelfcare and Consulting. And I am Ashley Keller, and I am a special needs parent coach. And I am also a board certified behavior analyst and a certified regular ed and special ed teacher. I have a background in psychology, and I have a kiddo who I would consider her high needs. So she has a neuroimmune condition, and it's very up and down. So I would consider her high needs. So I am a mom of a kiddo with high needs as well. So I founded Empower Self-Care and Consulting because parents are burned out and they're stressed and they're overwhelmed, and there's tons of resources, but also sometimes not the right resources. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you can't find them. So as a BCBA, it was a huge barrier. The burnout that parents experience is a huge barrier, because then they have a hard time doing the things that I'm telling them. I'm like, this is so simple, just do. And they're like, I can't do another thing, you know? So I opened Empower Self-Care and Consulting, and basically just to support and empower families. So I have my original program was called Behavior Boot Camp Plus Wellbeing. I changed it to Empowered Parenting and Wellbeing. The same program, just changed the name. Some people didn't like the name boot camp, so I think empowered parenting works just as well. But it's a 21-day asynchronous, so it's an on-demand program that is delivered right to their inbox, and it's 2 videos every day. The first video is on well-being, and it uses all concepts from acceptance and commitment therapy. And so it's a different way of looking at stress and being overwhelmed and problems, and just kind of reframing what you think of those things and how you handle them. So an example of that, one of my favorite things is in the program, we talk about how if you take a piece of paper and you hold it really close to your face, there's nothing else that you can see, right? Because that piece of paper, which could be all the stress and all your worries and all those things, is so close to your face, you can't see anything else. So it kind of ruins things, right? Because you can't do anything else. On the opposite end of that, if you're holding it so far away from you, struggling so hard to keep it away from you, also maybe now you can look around and see things, but you're struggling so much with this stupid piece of paper that you still can't do anything, right? So acceptance and commitment therapy is learning to lay that piece of paper down on your lap, so you have your hands, so it's not in your face, so you're not struggling with it. It's not gone, it's still there, but you can move on and you can continue to live your life around it. So that's really like the meat of it. And it's 21 days, and all the videos are less than 10 minutes. Some of them are 2. They're all less than 10 minutes. And then the other one is a behavior concept. And so the whole idea is that in these 21 days, you will learn the foundations of behavior, why behaviors happen, the functions of them, a ton of proactive, proactive and preventative strategies to help you manage basically where you are. So, because understanding, like, why is my kid laying on the floor having a tantrum right now? Understanding why by looking at all the different pieces is super helpful, because then you can next time be like, okay, well, last time we had this situation, this is what happened. So now maybe before we go into that, we can do one of these things, so spend a lot of time talking about preventative and proactive strategies and reinforcement, because that's huge. We all, I say at one point in probably all of my things is like, if the first thing you do when you win the lottery is you quit your job, right? Most people. So if we are constantly giving kids everything they want, they've hit the lottery and they no longer need to work for anything. So that is a huge piece, is like, what's your leverage as a parent, like use the things, not the necessities, but like use the things that they love, like iPad or, whatever, video games, and use that as leverage, because there's things that we need to do as responsible humans, children included. So that's my 21 day on demand program. Super cool. It also comes with coaching. So it's like a trial of coaching where I use a free app that you can contact me through, and you can send video, voice, or text, whatever you prefer. I usually respond in video because I want people to feel like they're talking to me, because they are. And so that has been pretty successful, and people have really enjoyed that. And it's nice because it is on demand. So it's delivered every day, Eastern time at like 5 a.m. So if you're an early riser, some parents do the well-being portion before the kiddos get up. And then after the kids are off to school or in bed later the night, they'll do the behavior piece. Some people do it back to back, but it's nice. And then if, like, I've had some families that are like, oh my gosh, everything hit the fan, I couldn't do it for like 3 days. So I just sat down for like 30 minutes or an hour and, like went through everything, and it was awesome. So it's nice. It's flexible, because as busy, overwhelmed parents, we need flexibility and accessibility. The newest one that I have is the Balance program that was created by doctors Greg Hanley and Kelsey Rupel. They're amazing. They're with FTF Consulting, and they created this 10-step program that literally starts with learning how to play with your kiddo and not place demands. And it moves up from there to build communication, to build tolerance to interruptions, tolerance to denied access when they're told no. So we're learning, like, just because we're told no doesn't mean we throw ourselves on the ground or throw the thing that's in our hand or, have a complete meltdown. So interruptions, transitions, giving directions, being told no. And then all of that is actually taught and practiced in 5 to 10 minute chunks twice a day. So again, it's super accessible, it's super effective, and it's just little tiny baby steps, and it can be broken down as far as whatever kid or parent needs it broken down. So like some kiddos will master something in a week and it'll be great and we don't have to break it down at all. And then others, we have to break it down and it might take a couple weeks, and we're breaking it into tiny little steps because we don't want that explosion. We're trying to prevent. It's all about prevention. So we want to prevent all of that, the big behaviors from happening. The Balance program, though, is really geared towards families with younger kiddos, definitely under 10 for the most part, and with emerging problem behaviors, which is also why we say younger. So these are often like 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds who are just getting frustrated with lack of language, or having issues with impulse control. A lot of times it's a communication issue, rigidity issue, things like that, things that we see often in autism and ADHD. Down syndrome, though, definitely. Intellectual and developmental disability, definitely as well. But it often comes down to a lack of language. So when we cannot vocally or functionally communicate language, even if that's through sign or pictures or a speech generating device, we're going to engage in behaviors because that's the only thing we have to express our feelings or our wants or our needs. And so the idea behind Balance program is to prevent those emerging problem behaviors like hitting, throwing, kicking, screaming, dropping, flopping, tantrums from blowing up and continuing to escalate until we have severe problem behaviors, like when the hitting actually results in injury to someone, like moms calling and saying, I was in the hospital last night with a broken jaw because I told my kid no. We don't want to get to that point, and we don't have to get to that point. We can use the balance program in order to not just teach tolerance, but also build the skills and build the communication, so that they can say like, no, thank you, I don't want to do that. Or can I have more time? Or in a minute, or whatever it is, like building those things in, and then teaching them that even though they say that, it's not always going to happen every time. And that's where the tolerance piece comes in. Because what we don't want to have, I actually just made a video of this today and put it up on my website. What we don't want to happen is with the Empowered Parenting and Wellbeing program, which is a great program to help parents stay afloat while they're waiting for those comprehensive ABA services. It's not ideal because it's not teaching tolerance, because I can't teach you in an on-demand course tolerance. Like, I need to be working with you individually and seeing how things are going and seeing the interaction, helping you build that relationship with your kiddo in order to break it down into the pieces that your child needs in order to be successful, so we don't escalate the behaviors. And that's where we want to be, is we want to be teaching prevention and build skills and tolerance to the things that, I mean, I don't like being told no, but I also don't break things when you tell me no. So like, I have a tolerance. So we need to teach that, because it's a skill, like kids and adults need to know it's not always going to go your way. You're not always going to like what people have to say. You're going to have to do things that you don't want to do. And that's life, and so teaching and building that tolerance in a safe way where they can be successful using natural reinforcement is huge. So I'm super excited to be offering this balance program, because it's so, I mean, it has research behind it. Like, you can Google the balance program with Dr. Greg Hanley and Dr. Kelsey Ruppel and find published, peer-reviewed articles on its effectiveness. So it is also, so it's only 10 steps. I don't remember if I said that. And it depends, like I said, how quickly people go through it, but it is possible that you could go through it in 10 weeks. Like if you are really on the ball and you really understand, and I do a good enough job teaching it to you, and you're just practicing in these tiny little chunks twice a day, like that's awesome. It's awesome. And then it prevents all these huge behaviors. It prevents, possible injury. It prevents, so being isolated socially. And I mean, parents can actually take their kids out and they can go to a birthday party, or they can go hang out with friends, or they can go to the running club, because they've built these skills, right? Because otherwise, I mean, if you have a kid, especially as they get older and older and bigger and stronger, if they don't have the tolerance, that's where people get hurt. They can hurt themselves, they can hurt other people. You have pica, you have, self-injury, severe aggression, elopement. Like, we don't want those things. So like, it's really exciting to have a system like this that can help prevent behaviors from escalating to that point.
Yeah. And it's so awesome because, and you probably mentioned this part of the way through, but, we know, whether we're parents who have a child with a diagnosis or we work in the field, but we know like early intervention is really what we need to be doing as soon as we see those behaviors. But anybody who, works around the field of special needs or has a kid with a diagnosis, we also know that there is always a wait list. You're always waiting for any kind of help, any kind of resources.
Yep.
And so like, this is so awesome because you don't have to wait, right?
Yep.
So
exactly. Yeah. And that it literally was built because of that. Like, that's what Doctors Hanley and Ruppel said. We're like, all these families need help. And like right now, CHOP isn't even taking kids for evaluations under 7 years old. Under 7. Like, that's how backlogged they are. So that means all these kids who are under 7 who need to be evaluated and diagnosed in order to get services through their insurance company, what do they do? So it's like, oh my gosh. So this program, Empowered Parenting, is the same thing. It can be used by anybody, basically. That one is just, more preventative and not so much teaching the tolerance and stuff, which is a huge piece of it. So that's just kind of a keep you afloat. But the balance program, it could potentially work us out of a job. Like if we could get enough people that are doing balance and providing this to their wait list, maybe those kids won't even need services. Like it is possible that we could teach these skills to a point where they're not escalating to where they need 40 hours of ABA a week and potentially residential setting. I mean, that's freaking awesome.
No, exactly. I mean, and it's so exciting because, we're constantly, and, then I get all excited, like, cause I used to work in the field too, right? And it's like, we're constantly like, how do we avoid getting to this point? Cause I worked in residential and, that just can be such a tough place to be for people who work there, for the kids who have to live there and for the families of those kids. And it's like, these are things that like we are figuring out, how can we avoid having to get to this point, escalating to this level. So it's awesome that you're able to offer that for families. And I mean, the empowered parenting sounds amazing too. And like you said, it is for anybody. So I'm assuming that means, my guess would be, it could be parents who have kids with a diagnosis, but also, it could just be any parent that is struggling a little bit with parenting, because parenting is hard, right?
Yep. Yeah. And why is my kid doing that? Like, why?
Right. Exactly. Right.
Yes. So absolutely. And the piece that I love so much about empowered parenting plus well-being is that well-being piece, because so many parents, whether they have special needs kiddos or not, are burned out and overwhelmed. And this world is a crazy place that we're living in right now, with wars and pandemics and school shootings and like horrible, it's stressful. So the first thing that often, unfortunately, goes by the wayside as a parent is you, right? And so you can't pour from an empty pot. I say that until I'm blue in the face constantly. I'm like, you cannot do it. Maybe for a little bit, somehow you can wring some water out, but there's nothing in there, like there's a reason why on airplanes, they tell you to put your mask on first. You can't help someone if you can't breathe. And so that, I love that 21-day program. Even just for the well-being piece. If you don't know much about behavior at all, you're going to learn a ton in the behavior piece also. It's pretty basic stuff, I don't think it's anything earth shattering. And honestly, balance isn't either. None of it is. And I think that's the beauty of it, is it's so simple. It's usable. It's an accessible thing to do that you can do truly right now. Like you could go do it and it works. Families need wins.
No, exactly. And I love all of what you're doing, because it's so important. But shifting a little bit to just a little bit out of what we were just talking about. Do you, and I probably should have told you ahead of time to prepare some tips, but do you have any tips for parenting young athletes? Because I feel like I've talked with a couple people about things like this as well, but at least for me, it's like you struggle so much with like, I want to encourage them. I want to push them. I want them to feel challenged, but I don't want them to feel overly challenged. But I don't want to push my agenda of like, I want you to be an athlete. I want you to be a runner, but like, I do want you to be healthy. Like anything for us as parents to like, what is this, what should we be doing? Right. Like not overdoing, not underdoing. What is a good thing to like help get our kids into sports and encourage them as needed?
So, I think modeling, number one, is modeling a healthy, active lifestyle and inviting them to come along with you. Now, I have a rule that mommy gets to go for her morning run by herself, because that's my sanity. And I think that is perfectly acceptable. You set your boundaries, you keep your space. That's totally fine. But it's also, that's a great model, right? Because I'm saying I need this for me to be a nice mom. Like if you don't want me to be yelling and screaming like a crazy person, like mommy needs a run in the morning. And so modeling making healthy food choices, modeling taking care of yourself and listening to yourself. I did a crazy hard Tabata workout yesterday, and I had a HIIT workout scheduled for today, and I didn't do it because I was very sore. And I was like, I'm going to overdo it. And I could injure myself. It doesn't feel good. And I was talking to my daughter about that. She'll be 11 actually this weekend. And I like kind of talked through that with her. So even just talking out loud about maybe decisions that you're making, I do think that it's really important not to try to live vicariously through your kids. Like you were saying, I want you to be this. Don't do that. Like if they don't want to run, then offer them some other kind of sport, it might not even necessarily be a sport. So like my kiddo rides horses. she does not do any other like organized sport. She runs and plays and does all of those things. She does run with me sometimes. But horseback riding is the thing that she enjoys. You know, that's what she likes. She tried baseball at one point. She got bored out of her mind. I think it was just too chaotic and stuff with things like soccer and hockey and stuff. It was too many people going, like, it was just too much. So I think offering different things that they can do to be active, and that can look very different. I mean, like, I know one of our neighbors does archery, and they do, I don't remember what it's called, but it's not like go stand and shoot at a one target. It's where you actually go through a course, and it's like, I think it's called maybe 3D, like a 3D trail or course, or I don't know. Sorry, but that's active and that's doing something. I mean, that requires muscles and it requires focus and, you know, all of those things. And I think also realizing that sports and learning to take directions from other people, impulse control. So if you're doing like drills, I don't know, like if you do running drills or anything like that, but that's kind of like, you know, freeze dance or red light, green light. Those things all help with impulse control. And so that's a really huge thing, is to just not just look at it from like a sports lens, but looking at it as a developmental lens and all the other ways that it's helping them. And also giving kids a chance to, I mean, talk to them about it. Like, what do you think of running? Or what did you think of soccer? My kiddo never really got into organized sports. Like I said, she got into riding pretty young. But we had a rule that, like, if you sign up to be on the team, you're on the team until the end of the season, because you made a commitment to that team and this is what you chose to do. And this is where we're at right now. If you decide not to do it again next year, that's fine, but you're on there for the season because it's a commitment to the team. So I think looking at it from that and making it clear. So one of the things we talk about in the programs is clear expectations, right? So having those conversations, kids are listening to you, kids are watching you, and kids have their own opinions. So if you ask them for it in an age appropriate way, you can have good conversations, you know, and even if it's like they're struggling with it or it's something that they thought they would enjoy it, but they didn't, that's a good life lesson too. You know, like, okay, so what part of it do you think we're struggling with? Do we want to try to make that better? So like maybe it's soccer and maybe it's the running. So maybe we need to work on running, you know, so like taking a problem solving lens to the sports and any issues that arise. I mean, it's all great life lessons if you frame it right.
Yeah, and that actually leads kind of into my next question. That's a little more of a selfish question for me as a coach, because I feel like I usually problem solve my problems really well. But I knew I was going to be talking to you, and I was like, this is something that's been coming up with. We have a couple of different groups that run. We have like an after school. Well, now it's summer, so our schedule's a little different. But we have a couple of different groups of kids always, and the dynamics are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like one thing I pride myself in is I'm very consistent and I always have clear expectations. But we often, especially on the weekends, we have a bigger time frame. So usually it's like 2 hours. So we end up playing games and then we do drills again and then games and then running. So, usually it's the motivator for the end of the class. We're going to do whatever everyone's favorite game is.
Yeah.
But I do remind them, like, we need to get everything we're supposed to do done so that we can play this game. So there's a very clear expectation. Everybody knows it. And even though running is an individual thing, we're kind of using it as a team. So like, we all need to be doing this so that we all can do the game. And I do have a few kids who we have, kids can be oppositional. That's like their thing. We do have kids who actually have an ODD diagnosis. So the opposition really sometimes gets in there. So there'll be things just like, well, I don't want to play that game today. It's like,
yeah.
So now it's no longer the motivator, but that was the motivator. And I know you actually do want to play it,
but it's not because you're using it. Yeah.
Right. So like, I feel like now I'm like, my question's starting to get confusing, but for groups like that, where you have some of those kids who are going to be really oppositional, or even just like the fact that, the group dynamics are always different. Like, how can we help motivate as a whole group without getting into, because then the kids are like, well, that's not fair that she ruined it for everybody. And it's like, it kind of isn't fair, but like, also we're a team. So like, you get into that whole struggle sometimes. So sometimes I go home and I'm like, I don't feel like I don't feel like I did that right today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how do you manage that the best way possible, I guess?
I mean, I think it depends. It depends on the kiddos. I mean, I think, so do they get to like vote on the game, or do you just know like that's the favorite thing?
Usually it's the favorite thing. Like I just know. But yeah, sometimes it's like, okay, is this the thing we want to do at the end of today kind of thing? So like, I guess they usually have an input in there.
I was going to say offering choices is always a big thing, to just say like, these are the things that we can do. I mean, I don't know how much help you have. I think that the offering choices might be helpful. At the beginning, like we have all these fun things that we need to do, but the funnest thing, what do we want that to be today? You know, like, what are we working for today as a team? Like, what's something that would be fun? I think it's hard. And this is why I do behavior. And this is why I focus on one kid, not the group, because it's hard with the group. Because I do agree with you that group contingencies aren't very nice, because it's really not fair when one bad egg, you know, ruins it for the whole bunch. Because what does that teach those kids? It teaches those kids that even if I do everything I'm supposed to do and I'm really excited about something, I'm doing a great job, this kid can mess it up for me. So what's the point of trying? You know, so like, that's a dangerous place to start too. So I would say choices. I would say trying to get them to vote. If you have an ODD kid, that might not help, because everybody else wants it, they might ruin it just because. So I wouldn't make those group contingencies if possible, because you don't want to set an expectation and then break it. That's not good. So I would just say whoever has done the things that they need to do is going to get to do this thing. And if he decides or she decides that they don't want to do it, then that's on them. They're not going to get to do it with all of their friends, and they're going to miss out, but they're not going to ruin it for everyone else. And they're not going to be the center of attention for ruining it for everyone else. So it really depends on the function. So that's something that we talk about a lot in empowered parenting. In the 21-day program, we talk about function, and we talk about why is the behavior happening, and that's how it depends on how you respond. But in a group setting, I think choices, not setting group contingencies, like really having it be like, if you do the things that you're supposed to be doing, then you're going to get to do this fun thing at the end. Even though I see where you're coming from, it's just not fair to everyone else to ruin it.
Yeah, no, and that totally makes sense. And especially, you know, you have to think, because sometimes I forget them, like, they're kids, right?
Yeah.
Like that might work when you're a high school team and it's like, you guys didn't perform well, everybody's running laps or whatever, right? You know, like, not that that's necessarily fair either, but it's like your brains are in completely different places when you're kids, and it's like, but why? You know, I'm 8 years old and you're saying I worked so hard all day to be able to play tag, and now I can't play tag because they didn't want to play tag.
Right.
So yeah, no, and I think that's great, because I mean, we always like, choices are easy to do. And I mean, for the most part, sometimes I am by myself, but it's like, when I'm not, you know, you don't have to play with us today if you don't want to have fun, right?
Right.
So yeah, no, I think that is great and super helpful. Groups are hard. Yeah, I never thought about that either, because I was always, you know, working one-on-one and things like that. And you know, it's like, yeah, you can identify the function, you figure out what they want to work for, you know, and then you're like, I'm good to go, right? I can do this all day. And then it's like, oh, now there's other people you have to also mix in. Like, it just becomes challenging.
Yeah. I think the other thing that could help too, and again, if it's ODD, that's it. It's a whole other bag of worms, but it could help, is reinforcing, like verbally praising, specific verbal praise, all the other people that are doing all the things. Like, Joey, I love how you whatever, like, followed that direction so quickly. That was so awesome. Or yay, Annie, that was so nice of you to be such a good sport about that. Or, you know, like, so praising them for what they're doing, being specific, not just good job, not just I like that, like very specific. Other kids, especially with younger kids, this won't work with high schoolers most likely, but younger kids, they're going to be like, oh, I want that attention. I want her to tell me that I did good. Like, so they're going to start trying to do, and you're going to start seeing them do things and look at you like, did you see it? Did you, like, you can tell me? So that might help too, is like to try to get, it's almost like a trick to get them to do what you want them to do, because you're giving them praise for it, you know, and they want that praise also. So that's another way of doing it, is just kind of ignoring that. Like, you're just being a nudge. I'm not even going to buy it. Like, I'm not feeding into that. I'm just going to talk to these kids or I'm going to engage in the behaviors that these kids are showing me that should be happening.
Yeah. And then that's a great reminder too, because it's like praise is the easiest thing we can do in any setting. And for some reason, I think we all just, we forget about it, or we just, we think we're doing it and we're just doing the generic good jobs and stuff. But I love that you pointed out, like, being specific. Your example even pointed out like a name so they know who you're talking about. So
Yep.
no, that's
Exactly.
great. And I definitely think I'm like, I always try to be like the praise person, because that's always my thing. But I'm like, I definitely need to be dialing in on that a little more. So no, that was awesome.
I thought about something else, and not to go totally off track here, but I'm also working on my certification to become a sexuality educator. And so that is another piece that you need to take into consideration too, especially if you have kiddos who are, like 8, 9, 10, 11, like they're starting to hit puberty. So hormones are playing a part. They're having different feelings. Like they might start looking at the opposite sex or the same sex, and like having feelings about them. And what is that? And who do I talk to about that? So like it's a really weird time. So taking that into consideration is something that's a really big deal too. And if you have kids, like oftentimes, especially around that age, you'll start seeing, especially boys, make stupid comments and ridiculous things. And maybe it turns out it's because Annie's the girl that he likes, or whatever. And so he's showing off for her, and he's whatever he thinks he's doing, and so taking those dynamics into consideration and knowing that it's a very weird time in life and a confusing and potentially scary time. And unfortunately, a lot of parents don't know how to talk to their kids about it. They wait for school to talk about it. And that is seriously lacking. And so that can cause massive issues, especially in the special needs community, because they don't have access to sex ed, and inclusive sex education. So that's another piece to keep in mind too.
Well, and that's great to know, because I mean, I'm sure at some point maybe I learned like at what age kids hit puberty. But when you think puberty, you're thinking like teenagers with acne who are going out and dating and things like that, right? You're not thinking 8-year-olds who are just starting to feel changes that they have no idea about. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I don't look at the 8-year-olds at Run Club and think like, oh, they could be starting to feel different ways about everything, right? I'm just like, they're 8, right?
Yeah, they're babies. No,
exactly.
It's happening.
Yeah, well, no, that's super helpful too, because I think, things that I've learned throughout coaching and other things is like, we really need to be looking at the whole kid and the kids as individuals, because like everything you kind of talked about today too, is just like, there are so many different approaches and different things, and you just got to know what's going on with them to be able to help them. So no, I think that's super great. And before I let you go, because I am starting to run out of steam a little bit. It's getting late over here.
I hear you.
Right, I'm like, it's almost 8 and I'm like, I'm tired. But I said we were going to talk about running, because that's usually where I start. And you brought up your running a little bit, how your daughter sometimes runs with you, but also running is your time. So do you just want to tell us a little bit about like how you got into running and kind of your running journey, where you're at with running? And it sounds like running is really the way you calm yourself and it's something you need. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
So it's funny, because I was the kid that was like, Mom, you need to write me a note for gym. Like, I'm not running the mile. I can't do that. Like, that was me. I was so that kid. And honestly, calling myself a runner now is probably very generous. I'm like a turtle dragging itself through mud. But it feels good to me. So I do it. I don't know when I started. I think it was only just a few years ago. And where we live, I think this is all in this area. So we're out by Hibernia Park. So it's pretty hilly out here. And so I have like a 2.5-mile loop that I do. And it's just nice because it's outside. It gets me away from the house. I take my dog with me. Sometimes I'll run through the park. Usually I just stay on the roads, and it feels good. Like, I've seen quotes like, running's cheaper than therapy. My favorite is running in the rain. So I do like storms, but I get sad if it's in the morning and there's thunder and lightning, because then I can't run in the rain. But I love it. There's just something about it, like pouring down rain, running, that it's very cathartic, and I don't know. It's just something that I enjoy. It's something that I can like push myself with. I don't generally run any more than like 3 miles. I used to run like 7 to 10 randomly, like a couple times a week when I was running with a friend. But anymore, I usually just do my little loop, maybe a little extra. It's just good. I clear my head. Depending on how I feel. If I'm feeling sluggish, I will run with music because I need to drown out my body screaming. If I'm feeling like good and like, yay, I'm ready to run, I don't run with music because I like to be able to hear my feet hitting the ground and hear the birds singing and, whatever. And just kind of use it as a mindfulness exercise too, is like, how does my body feel? And, what do I feel? What do I smell? What do I see? That kind of thing. And incorporating that mindfulness piece in with the running. So it's just something I love to do. I like high impact. I like kickboxing. I like HIIT workouts. I like the Tabata was good. I like high impact.
No, that I appreciate your running story so much because so a lot of people I've been talking to lately, which are also so incredible, but I'm talking to people who do ultra marathons, things all over, like they're doing 100-mile races and stuff. And I'm like, I would love to be you. And I would love to feel like that's something I could do. And I'm sure at some point in my life, I'm going to challenge myself to do, maybe not a 100-mile race, but like, I've never even done a marathon yet because long distances is not my thing. But I'm like, right now, especially the way my life is, like, I'm just a casual runner, right? Like I get up, it feels good to be able to go run. I do a couple of miles, bring it back home. And, I feel good whether sometimes it's with music or a podcast, sometimes it's just listening. So I'm like, as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, this feels so relatable. As much as I love hearing the inspiring runners and all the incredible people who are talking about all these amazing races they've done, I'm just like, wow. But then I'm just like, oh, right. There are runners just like me who are just
Normal
like,
people.
I'm a runner. Right. It's like, right. I'm a runner today and I'm going to get out and go run 3 miles at whatever pace my slow body is going to make me go.
Yep. That's right. That's me.
Right. You're right.
You're welcome.
I know. I'm like, I hope it doesn't sound like at all like discrediting, but I'm like, I love that you're like also just a normal runner. And it's so funny. I forget that you live close to me because you mentioned Hibernia Park and I'm like, oh, right. I like everyone I've been talking to lately are, from all over the place. And so I'm like, yes, Hibernia Park. I know where that is. And it is really hilly.
It is
that
very
is a hilly
yes.
run.
Yes, for sure.
So
yeah. And then my kiddo, she, like I said, she does horseback riding. She does like to come run with me every now and then. She is not a runner. She's worse than I am. I mean, like she makes me feel like a great runner. So she does not have the stamina yet. So like we work on form, like she's very much like, she just wants to run as hard and as fast as she can. But I think horseback riding and sports and learning to listen to your body is a huge benefit of all of those things. And it's something that a lot of adults don't have. And I joke with her because I'm like, mommy's going to listen to her ear or like have her earbuds blasting so that I can't hear my body screaming, but I'm doing that on purpose. Don't do that though. Not good for your eardrums, not good not to listen to your body. Sometimes you just got to get over that and then you can settle, so I think that that's a really good, it's good life lessons.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's awesome that she wants to go running with you. And I'm sure that's like fun for you guys to get to do together. No, that's super cool. Well, before we sign off, just real quick, where I think you said in the beginning, but where can people find you? And of course, I will add all of it in the description because I know it's sometimes hard for people, but some people like to hear things and see them in person. So where can they find all of your awesome stuff?
So just on my website, so EmpowerSelfcareandConsulting.org. Empowers with an E, EMPOWER, selfcareandconsulting.org. And that's where everything is. And you can reach out to me on there. My email's at the top of that. It's EmpowerSelfcareandConsulting@gmail.com. And then, we have lots of freebies. I do free Q&As every month. I have free consultations because for the balance program, that is something that I didn't mention. For the balance program, you have to talk with me because it's a live thing. Like it's not an on-demand course, but also it's not appropriate if there are severe problem behaviors happening. That's an exclusionary thing. So like even if you told me that there weren't, and maybe there aren't, but we got into it and severe like problem behavior started happening, this program is not meant to intervene. It's meant to prevent. So that is something. So there's free consultation links all over my website that you can, if you just want to chat and find out like what might be good for you. I also have a Help My Kids Are Stuck on Screens 20-minute on demand, really cool little system, super simple to set up. and really effective. I've used it with tons of clients and families that love it. And so just contact me, come to a free Q&A, steal some of the freebies. I try to post tips and resources. I did an A to K for the alphabet, A to K, Medicaid and respite information for each state, A to K. So I'm working on L forward. But just, I try to put tips and resources and like self-care tips and things like that up on the website too. So that's also up there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking to me and all of the awesome resources that you gave us today.
And again, thank you so much to Ashley for talking to me about all of the amazing things that she is doing. Make sure you check out Empower Self-Care. She has a private Facebook group, or maybe it's a public Facebook group, as well as just checking out her website and her social media, because she is constantly offering free tips, resources, advice, all kinds of really helpful things. So check there if you ever are looking for some parenting advice as well. We also have some other really cool interviews coming up soon. I am going to interview my mom, who's a registered dietitian, talking about fueling for young athletes. We also are talking to a local running store owner about shoes. We have some conversations about mindfulness and mindset and just other leading by examples. So we have some other really cool things coming up. So hopefully you check back to check out some of our resources. Thank you for tuning into Raising Runners. New episodes every Tuesday, and we are always looking to talk to people about running, mental health, or anything along the spectrum that can help our young athletes, or just talking to runners or parents and coaches of our young runners as well. Hopefully you find our resources helpful. If you have questions, comments, or anything else, feel free to email me at marikeyrunclub@gmail.com.